Do you know how many tons of bananas enter the country each year? Geoff Mansell does, and he is on a mission to reduce that number by growing his own bananas and supplying them to local supermarkets. In spring last year, he took Leah Tebbit for a walk through his greenhouse, where he grows a variety of subtropical fruits.
We're in Northland. We're in a small volcanic belt called Mangataperry, and we're about 2.5 hours north of Auckland.
And you're specialising in the subtropical plants, aren't you?
Correct, yes. We bought the property and it had a few feijoa trees on it, and we've expanded those feijoas and figs. We planted some figs as well. And then about maybe 8 years later, we planted some bananas, and then we planted more. And eventually, because I'm a trained nurseryman, I decided that we needed to have a greenhouse so that we could hold them during the winter, store them, all different types of subtropicals. We're trying to introduce new ones from Australia, and just seed that's permitted on the Biosecurity Index, and trying to develop more types that will be adaptive to our climate. Yeah.
Should we go have a look at them then?
Let's do that. Yeah.
We walk through a small orchard of citrus at the back of Geoff's house before I spot my first banana plant.
Yes, well, there is quite a bit going on here. We've got 4.7 hectares, so it does tend to be quite large area to look after.
Was it all that 4.7 all in figs and feijoas when you first arrived?
No, so it actually had 4 paddocks. So yeah, three of the blocks were in grass, and we used for some heifers that were on the property when we bought it. And we've actually got probably the 0.7 is actually this bush area at the back of the bamboo, which runs down to our neighbour's drive. So we've revegetated in there and tried to plant some native species that are indigenous to this area or endemic to this area, creating more shelter really from the south. And you can see that the banana leaves tear very easily in the wind, and it's not actually the best for them to tear because all of the cells are interrupted that are carrying the cellulose into the fruit and plumping it up, if you like. So it's kind of like their solar panel and their carbohydrate factory. But if it's torn, you end up with smaller fruit, and they can't operate as they should,
right,
optimally.
Because it kind of it looks like hair almost, like
it's frazzled.
Yeah,
dry hair. Yes,
but it's sort of hanging down as a big yellow bag, which I'm guessing is wrapped around the fruit of the plant.
That's right. Yeah.
What's the concept of the bag?
So the bag has protective features. So the silver side of the bag is to protect from the UVs. You turn the protectant side towards the sun, which is normally on the north side. This one seems to have been circumnavigated, probably by Cyclone Gabriel. That the yellow is, they come in different colours, and the notion with that is you can schedule your harvest depending on what colour you've got. So we've only got 2 colours, yellow and blue, so pretty much we alternate each month. And then with a little bit of flag tape, that's what we know, green was January, pink was February, orange was March, and so on. Gotcha. So that's how you can schedule your harvest time. So it's normally about 6 months when the inflorescence comes out to when it's ready. But the other good thing about the bunch covers which is what we call the banana bags, the bunch covers protect them from mice, rats, possums, birds.
True, they like going up and having a munch, do they?
Yeah, they do. Yes. But the only real known pest in New Zealand, if you do cover your bananas, then you avoid most pests. But if we had pūkekos closer to the house, they can devastate the banana. They tend to eat the stem, and then the plant dies eventually.
Yeah. What is this big shed that's just to the right of us?
Okay, so that big green shed is our packing shed, and we've got a feijoa grader machine in there. And we tend to be locked into a cycle of harvest from February until usually Normally it goes through till May, but this year it actually stopped at Anzac weekend, which is usually our most, voluminous. We usually have half a tonne, for instance, over Anzac weekend of feed-jaws. But yeah, so we grade them in there, and then they're crated up, and then we can take them directly to the supermarket.
So you're supplying to the local supermarkets?
Yes. Yeah.
How long has that been in operation for?
With the feed-jaws, probably pretty much three years after we got here, Craig, would it be? When we got here, the feed-jaw trees were very young, so we didn't hardly have any surplus. Took a few years before we had volume. And then with my NZ-GAP certification and getting to know the supermarket owners and staff, we managed to be able to supply direct.
And it's just the feed-jaws that you're sending to the supermarkets, or is there more?
Anything really. So we've got a certification that allows us a range of about 24 subtropicals. So the figs and the feed-jaws are in there, bananas, papayas, pineapples, and the list goes on. I forget the figure. I think it's something like 72,000 tonnes of bananas are chomped through annually. So there's quite a number of bananas imported into New Zealand. Yeah. So if we can, substitute that with our own grown ones, we'll be...
Better for the environment.
Better for the environment, yeah. Come through and have a look at the greenhouse part of the property.
As in not the green shed, but the actual greenhouse?
Actual greenhouse, yeah. So a plastic house. It's a 6.6 metre high structure, which is covered in a double skin of plastic, and the plastic's kept apart by a pump of air circulation. And the good thing about that is it provides insulation to the outside temperature with the inside temperature.
For goodness sake, it's a big greenhouse.
It is a big greenhouse. It's 600 metres squared. And then on the end of it, so the whole 100 metre length of this block, that's the shade house at the end of it. So once we get the orders out later in spring, we'll put them in the shade house part for hardening them off, for conditioning them, and then we take them down to Auckland or further afield.
And lining the greenhouse on either side are 2 lines of more banana plants as well.
That's right. So these were the first 2 rows of bananas. This used to be a fig block, believe it or not. But as Craig said, with the lower sunshine hours here and the warm, damp conditions, the varieties that we had in here weren't ideal, and they didn't perform very well. So we put the bananas in those 2 rows. That row first went in about 3 years ago, and then as I got more plants, I was able to put them in, and work our way across. Now that left a lot of space in the middle, and as I said before, the opportunity to hold over winter inside would mean that we could, produce more nursery plants. So they're self-sustaining, the bananas. They just keep throwing up pups, and so that stem there with the fruit on it is what we call grandmother, and the next stem that's going to come behind it will be the mother stem.
Right.
So once grandmother's, once we've taken the inflorescence off the banana bunch off the plant, that will die down, and we tend to cut it down in vertical sections, put it around the base of the banana, and then it breaks down and the nutrient goes back into the soil to feed the next one coming through.
Gosh,
so
it's cool.
It's a constant cycle. So we have 3 different types here. We have the ladyfinger type, which you can see are the taller ones, and we have the Cavendish type and the Honduran types. And then within those types we have a number of varieties, right, which we bag up and produce as nursery plants. Come through into the greenhouse. The temperature is quite different in there. Just imagine you're stepping into Australia, or you're stepping through to Malaysia or somewhere in a more tropical climate.
Gotcha.
So here we are in our production greenhouse. So the first 2 years that we were in operation of this greenhouse, we put a raised central bed through the centre, and we wanted to trial the varieties to see which would grow under the 6.6 metre limiting factor of the roof, and whether the fruit was actually going to be 25% bigger, being completely covered in plastic and protected from the environment. And with those leaves that aren't torn, as you can see, they can produce the optimum size fruit indoors.
Right. And so to sort of describe, it's got a sawdust floor. Yeah, you've got lines and lines of all sorts of different plants, even cacti as well. Yeah. It is quite warm in here, but I can only imagine it's a lot warmer in summer.
It is very hot here. So hottier rises, so we've got a top vent there. The house is environmentally monitored for temperature, humidity, and we've got a monitoring system on the irrigation. And we also have misting in here, so the only thing that keeps the temperature down during very, very hot days is the misting system. So moving along here, there's some abu, which is from the upper Amazon regions.
What's behind us right here?
Okay, so these are tropical papaya, and interplanted to utilise all this space that we've got left is pineapples, queen pineapple, and we've got a few of the cayenne pineapple as well.
And the pineapples that are here, they sort of look like yuccas or something that you've planted just for show, but it's because the fruit hasn't come up through for them yet.
That's right. So this one here, so it has had its fruit in the past, but we're leaving it there to propagate more suckers from it. So this one here has a fruit coming up through the middle.
Oh, it does too. It's sort of red, actually.
It's actually in the bromeliad family, so it's not a cacti. But they do resemble cacti in some ways because of these prickly spines.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the bromeliad family, and the central tube is where the pineapple comes out. On this side we've got these are lucuma, which is often used for flavouring in ice cream in South America where they're from. And another one called Canithdale, which has butterscotch flavoured fruit. And yeah, again, it's used.
Butterscotch flavoured fruit.
Yeah, well, yes.
Delicious by the sounds.
Yeah.
What are the type of people coming to you? Is it families or those that have immigrated to New Zealand and looking for it? Or is it just sort of your average Joe Bloggs gardener that has a passion for bananas and wants them in their own backyard?
It's all of those, really. We have had a few elderly groups through. We've had some school children through. We've had plenty of, Asian people that like the kind of fruit that we're growing here, and also all different sectors of society, really.
And all across New Zealand as well? Or?
Yeah, I think it's definitely location specific, but in certain areas you can grow them well, and there's always the opportunity to grow under cover, as we are under these covered structures, and that's, I think it accounts for, is it 70 or I think it's more like 80 or 90% now of internal consumption in countries around the world like Turkey. They grow their bananas under cover. In Spain they grow them under covers. So you would think there that the climate would be ideal for growing them outside, but we've seen kilometres of greenhouses over there, and they grow a lot faster and the cycle time is quicker. So I think there's scope for where those areas where they can't grow outside, you can always grow them inside.
We reach the end of the greenhouse and head out past the shelter belts into paddocks of plants.
Well, there's 200 plants outside,
yeah,
and there's about 300 to 500 plants inside that greenhouse at the moment.
Truly.
So this was a feed jar block. So they're planted at 4 metre spacings. So what we had to do is adapt the irrigation lines to bring them into a 2.5, 2.7 metre spacing between the bananas is what we've got in these rows. We've kept the root ball, of the feed jar that's in between the two bananas.
Yeah, I can see. We've basically got one line of bananas in front of us and then the next are feijoas, aren't they?
Absolutely. So those two rows there, if you like, were taken Out of the greenhouse, after Cyclone Gabriel, we managed to get some woofers, some willing workers on organic farms, and we managed to plant another 2 rows of, well, almost 2 rows. So it's really a row and a half there. You can't see the extent of it, the full extent, and they have survived over winter. That's how adaptive they are, you know.
It's quite a long field that we're in at the moment,
They're
isn't
quite
it?
long rows, yeah. They're over 100 metre in length, and each end we've got the headland so that we can turn our vehicles around and take the harvested product up to the shed, which is normally in crates, and it's normally was feijoas in this block.
What motivates you to keep going with all the banana varieties?
I guess there's always more varieties around the corner. You know, finding out what the early introductions were that were brought into New Zealand when it was able to be imported. It's now a prohibited import to bring any kind of germplasm into the country of bananas. We can only bring in the fruit, but not the plant material. So I think it's just the novelty of it. There's always more out there, and seeing the different types that are being grown overseas that were brought into New Zealand at the time, like the red Dakar and the dwarf Jamaican. So it's trialling those as well. So there's always, you're always learning. You're on this journey.
Geoff Mansell of Kotare Subtropicals there, just 15 minutes outside of Whangarei.